this July 24th, 2023. This time I'll get approval of tonight's agenda. Could I entertain a motion for that, please?
Motion to approve.
All right, motion by Ms. Best. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This time we'll ask everyone to stand, and Mr. Judkins will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. I trust you've had a chance to look over the consent agenda. At this time, could I get a motion to accept and approve tonight's consent agenda, please?
Move for approval of the consent agenda.
Motion, Mr. Zitman. Do I have a second? Second, Mr. Judkins. Any discussion on tonight's consent agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Public comment, there are none. Student advisory, school's not in session, so not to do that. At this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Swallows for the Classified Employee of the Month.
All right, thanks so much. We are recognizing Classified Employee of the Month for July, Jane Birchfield, who's here with us. So I'm going to read what was said by Miss Lynette McKinley, who nominated her. Miss McKinley is, of course, a sixth grade teacher at Warren County Middle School. And she says, "We would like to recommend Jane Birchfield for Classified Employee of the Month. Jane is always kind to the students and teachers. She works to make sure the children have what they need, whether it be stopping by classrooms in the mornings to make sure all students got breakfast, or making sure students have special dietary needs, the dietary needs, and have food to eat. We appreciate all that she does for our school." And I will just say, in addition to that, our cafeteria staff over the last 3 years has just been stretched to the limit with all that they've had to do. And I know that Ms. Birchfield and her staff, and as well as all of our school cafeteria staff, have done an exemplary job. So we are proud to recognize Ms. Jane Birchfield as our Classified Employee of the Month. We're going to welcome her. Now we get to take pictures. Y'all come up. You have to get your picture too. So here. Why don't you come right here and they can be on the other side of it. Right there. Then you'll take our picture.
Okay.
Congratulations. Job well done. All right. Very good.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. All right. Congratulations. This time we'll move on to Facilities and Resources, Dr. Swallows.
All right. David, you want to do that or you want me to do it? All right. So let's just do an update first, and then we'll get into a couple of requests. So let me get this pulled up here. So lots going on. I told my wife this morning, or last night, it's amazing all that this school system has done as far as facilities and upgrades over the course of the last 3 years. It's just been a sprint for that, and we've been fortunate to be able to use our ESSER money to be able to do a lot of that. But paving at Warren County Middle School, if you've been by there in the last day or so, it's getting pretty exciting to see all the pavement go down. They've got the binder level, the binders down on parts B and C, and part A, they've graded that, and construction has started on the concrete work. If you go by there, you can see they've started to put some of that construction into the concrete around there. So really looking good. I've had several comments for people excited about that. So we are anxiously hoping at least B will be finished by the time school starts. So, and I think that'll happen.
I think so.
Yeah. Centertown, the grade work is completed at Centertown. Finally got approval that the pad was dry enough to move on, and so the footers and the gravel bedding will start soon. As you can see out to my left, with the addition to this building, the foundation has been laid there. And the gravel has been installed, and the underground plumbing will start hopefully in the next little bit. So the roofing projects at Bobby Ray and Irving College are almost complete. They're working on the final punch list, and that should be complete real soon. We've also put out the middle school auditorium roof bid, and we're waiting for the contract and all the paperwork to get started there. If you've been over to the campus of the high school in Hickory Creek, you've seen a lot of work happening on the parking lots there. There's been some repair work. If you went by the band field into the where the main office is in the last couple months of the year, you might have jolted yourself back into, I don't know, there was a big hole that's been taken care of, thank goodness. So, and they're resealing that and painting parking lots as well. So a lot of stuff happening there. We also, and David may want to share a little bit about this, but they have been doing a lot of work inside Warren County High School, moving some administrative offices from the bottom floor. I know, for example, the freshman academy principal counselor are moving from downstairs, where they were removed from the 9th grade, to upstairs, to where they'll be right there with most of the freshman class, which excuse me, makes a lot of sense. Problem is, needed to some construction to build those offices to get that
There was
done.
a computer lab that we actually had to, we didn't have to, but it came out with all the Chromebooks and everything. There was no need for that computer lab, so we took that computer lab and divided it into 3 offices, a freshman principal and guidance and his secretary. And we took that room and put, and our maintenance guys done that themselves. And we're to the point now to where it's fixing to be painted, probably be painted tomorrow, so we can finish everything up and get them moved in, hopefully before school starts.
Also at the high school, they've been retrofitting the early childhood learning lab into a cosmetology lab, and so how close are we on that?
We're down to, all the equipment is in there, all the electrical has been run, and we're down to just some plumbing for a few sinks and just finishing it up really.
So ultimately, lots going on. There will be a lot to continue. We just ask that there be some patience, especially at the middle school, as we begin the year, because we will still be under construction. But the middle school's worked on a plan for that. The pickup and drop off will be just like it was to end the year. But it's pretty exciting to see that. I would also say some patience when we start football season, and there are a lot of people looking for parking spots too. So again, we're pretty excited about it. It's going to take us a little while to get there. Also,
Hey Grant,
yep.
one thing that I forgot to put on that list was the awning that blew down over at the middle school.
That's right.
We did send the PO to the company, and they're in the process of getting materials and everything, so that'll be going up shortly. Unfortunately, it'll be during school. We'll have to reroute students and stuff around that, but that's part of life, I guess.
So also in your packet, you got an email or a letter from Miss Lewis at West Elementary. They have a project that they've been working on as a pavilion for their playground. They've been working with the PTO for a couple of years to raise money to get that structure off the ground. And so they're really just trying to provide a space for students to, when it's hot, to be able to sit, or special events, or outdoor classrooms. Really, what the request is asking for you all to approve them building that structure. They've also asked for help with the materials, and potentially our maintenance department to help with some of that labor. And David and I talked about that a little bit. Ultimately, there are a bunch of projects going on, so trying to get that on the list will be tough here early on. But we do feel like this is probably something that needs to be done at West. I do not know, I meant to talk to Ms. Lewis today about where they are in raising money with the PTO project, but it feels to me like with requesting some of the labor and materials, they may not be across the line yet. So ultimately, all the board would need to do is consider that request and approve that if you all choose to do that.
Dr. Swallows, that that kind of brings up a question about the, on the West Elementary Pavilion. Where were they, what part of the playground were they thinking about locating that?
So it's what I would say I don't know if I'm using the right term, but it would be behind the building where those playgrounds all intersect. So it'd be closer to the Civic Center.
I mean, the thought that occurs to me, and I think the pavilion, sounds like a great idea that hopefully we can proceed with that, but looking forward to the expansion of the gymnasium, and there may be some better ideas than mine, but it looks to me like the logical place would be to expand southward toward the Civic Center. And that would take some of that existing playground. Playground would have to be reconfigured, that some of the features would have to be moved, but I'm certainly hoping, and maybe that's in our strategic plan, to actually, lay down some markers and have a timeline for getting on to the West Gymnasium.
So that project was actually designed when we did the original expansion 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
And so there's actually a blueprint for the expansion of the gym,
Okay.
and it would concur what you're saying. It would go south toward the Civic Center. So we've got to just be real careful about what we're doing with the pavilion, because that campus is also lacking with usable space.
Yeah.
And so they have some needs. A lot of the things that we've been talking to about West, they also have a portable classroom on campus that we would like to get rid of and be able to expand that. We have said numerous times about the gym project. They ultimately are not able to play games in their gym. They use that for PE. Something this board has talked about is being able to do that. But I think in considering this request that's on the table, I think that would be the wise thing, would be to say we need to look at the entire campus and their needs before we start to build on. I think, again, I understand where she's coming from. Because it's a PTO project and they want to do that, she just wants to make sure it's okay with this board that we do that. But I would ask that we work together and make sure that we locate that in the right
That
place.
sounds like a good idea. The other thing, and of course, I'm always looking for an opportunity to spend some money, but the cafeteria at the high school, we talked about that off and on, and maybe that's in the mill for some kind of plans for expansion here again. Putting some ink on paper or a CAD program to show how that might be expanded.
Again, I agree with you. I think there are some needs that we have to address immediately. I think, again, this board has to spend some time talking about what the future looks like in Warren County Schools, whether it's adding on to buildings or adding buildings. I think, again, we are uniquely poised in a time where this year we've seen growth. We went from just under 6,100 to more than 6,200. So do I feel like that's going to continue? I'm not sure, but I can say that I've been told by more than one person that there are subdivisions that are being planned in different places, and ultimately if you get to adding 50 or so kids to every one of our elementary schools that we have, or more than that, we can probably handle that in several of our elementary schools, West not being one of those. It is a capacity. If you add those ultimately all feed into one high school. And we are almost at capacity in that high school. We are certainly at capacity in the cafeteria. We have 5 lunches that happen in that cafeteria currently, and those are all packed. I do not believe it was designed to have 400 to 500 students in there at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Bennett would know that better than all of us.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to look at that. And again, I think your first phrase was the key one. It's all about the money. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Okay, can we get can I get a motion to, for this request for the pavilion at West Elementary?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Mr. Judkins, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Bennett. Any discussion on what they're wanting to do?
Well, I think we really do need to get a little more information on how, because it does say in here that trouble with raising enough funds to have it built, and the material and stuff, which wouldn't be any problem at all. But I think we just need a little more specifics on exactly where it wants to be. And like I said, we've got so much going on. We know this is not going to happen anytime soon, but, you know, I have no issue with doing it or going all in for it, but I'd like to have a little bit more information on what they're really asking for.
I'll be happy to visit. I'll be happy to visit with her and get a sketch and bring that back to you all before we.
That's a great point, Chris, and like I say, because, you know, we want to be fair to all of our schools.
Right.
You know, and, you know, I know David in maintenance has been great about going and helping with labor, but like I said, I know a lot of the schools have raised their own funds for the materials, so I think that's a great
And
point.
that's great too, that the PTO is doing that. Just
Sure.
like a little more information before we take it to a vote and agree to do something.
I think
before we
that's a
have
good
all
idea.
But she's exactly right. There's no sitting place, and you're
Right.
out in
Yeah,
the
we're-
sun. You're totally exposed to the sun.
I agree.
There are no shade trees back there.
So are you asking to table that until you get more information?
Yes, I'll ask that we table that until we get a little more information, maybe.
Okay, we have a motion to table this.
You have to rescind that original motion and then make the motion to table.
Okay, we're gonna rescind that original.
I don't know who made that.
I'll make
Mr.
a motion to.
Well, has anybody else got any, I mean?
Well, I mean,
talk about it?
pending getting that clarification
Yes.
from
Okay.
Ms. Lewis.
I think we could rephrase the motion, go ahead and approve it until we get the final schematics of it.
Okay, then
I think
let's
David,
rescind the original vote.
Well, you can rephrase the motion to say you want to give them conditional approval pending more
Conditional
information.
approval.
I mean, that's fine.
If that's satisfactory to
Right,
y'all,
yeah. We get the information that we need.
which I think Dr. Swallows and David will be on top of it. And if there's any problems, I'm sure they'll.
Will you verbiage that for me, Larry? You want to make that motion?
Approve the West Elementary Pavilion, based on, the criteria that everyone's satisfied with, I guess.
So conditional approval.
Yeah.
Conditional
Conditional
approval.
approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Anything else in facilities?
No, sir.
Okay, on to operations, Dr. Swallows.
All right, so first item on the operations report, this board voted to enter into a time of strategic planning. This past year, we budgeted for that, and we have entered into an agreement with NIET to update our 5-year strategic plan. So just to give you some history, obviously, there was a 5-year plan that was crafted and spent a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of work. And that 5-year plan ended with 2021. At that time, we talked about as a board that obviously we were coming out of a pretty intense time of closure and COVID. And so we said, let's table this for a year until we can do this. So we got to last year, and now there are some requirements around our new funding model with TISA that we will have to be setting goals based around that funding that we are using. So we kind of said, let's figure this out before we go into the strategic planning. And so I feel like that we are to that point, and so we have the luxury of having Mr. Bobby Cox here with us tonight to talk about. We met last week to outline this, and he's going to share with you a little bit about what we talked about and kind of the process that we're going to go through over the next few months. And so we'll invite Bobby to share with you.
Get my notes up here. I don't know if you're gonna put it up there or.
Do you want to put it up there?
It doesn't matter, whatever you wanna
It's
do.
up to you.
I
Well,
can-
that would be kind of helpful, wouldn't it? So we can all see it.
Yeah, I got it.
There you go. See if it works. Well, I say we can get it up here.
If not, we can just go with it like that.
let Bobby talk while I try to figure this out.
Oh,
yeah, but help if it would be plugged in.
Helps with the business end plugged in on the other end.
Helps if it's plugged
Add a little data to it.
Yeah.
Helps if it's plugged in.
I'm not great at technology, but
There it is.
Yeah.
That should
I have that trouble a lot of times when the TV goes out too, you know, a lot of times.
There it is.
There we go.
Good.
Well, as Grant said, I appreciate the opportunity. I do work with strategic planning within IET on a part-time basis, and that's one of the buckets that we work with is strategic planning. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of the process. Just as some background, we've done several strategic plans. We just finished about a year ago Humboldt City Schools. We just finished Lawrence County Schools. Partnered with Cleveland City Schools. We're currently doing Cumberland County Schools. So we've done this work, and primarily that's kind of what I've done within IET is doing this from a district perspective. So what we'll try to do is just kind of go over the highlights of where we're at, but I thought I'd give you a little bit of information about NIET. You know, NIET has worked with the district for several years. This is the mission and vision of NIET. You know, building educator excellence to give all students the opportunity for success is the mission statement, and the goal of NIET is to put a high quality teacher and leader in every school building. So the company is a nonprofit. It's 501c3. It's over 20 years of experience. You can see kind of the numbers there that have expanded, and NIET works coast to coast. You know, literally from Alaska, South Carolina, with school districts across the country, doing several different things, but this is part of the work that they do. So you can kind of see the work is in three buckets: teaching and support for principals, and then district leadership. So that consulting and strategic planning is one bucket within the district leadership portion of that. There are other district-led initiatives, you know, new curriculum and things of that type that we work with, and then district instructional leadership and coaching. So we do that work as well with new leaders. So that's kind of the work that NIET does. What we would be doing with strategic planning is really looking at the plan that you have. Obviously, you know, I was involved in that at the beginning and know how that was done, and the process is going to kind of be similar. But I met with Grant earlier, about 2 weeks ago, to kind of discuss what we wanted to do with that. Do we want to look at mission and vision? Do we want to, you know, design a steering committee that kind of does that work and make sure that we bring in that information back to the Board of Education? What are kind of the key priorities now? And then create that implementation plan, timeline, and procedures. And I think you have the timeline that's already been supplied, you know, to you of kind of what we've laid out as when we would start and how we would start. So those are kind of the key components. And it's really, I kind of look at it as, you know, everybody has a lane that they're in. And, you know, if you look at that like you're going to Nashville on a Monday morning and, you know, traffic's all the way across the board, then the Board of Education has a lane, the district administration has a lane, and we have a lane. And our lane is more in the guidance perspective of where you're at. It's your plan, and what we're doing is calling on what we've seen across the country and experience to kind of guide that plan. Because a lot of times you get in, you know, the work that you do every day, and sometimes it's good to have that outside perspective of things. But at the end of the day, the plan is going to come to you for approval. It's going to be your plan, and that's what we want to provide, and that's my goal. And I'll be the one that's you know, doing the work. So the steering committee, you know, is obviously built of the director of schools as the chair, central office staff, key leaders, supervisors in the central office. So they'll be working, you know, with me, going through the process of that strategic plan. And so, you know, bringing those members of that committee together, they'll be doing, you know, development work, they'll be doing brainstorming, they'll be reviewing goals and action steps, they'll be developing those, researching information, and bringing that to the committee. meetings. So at that point, then what we'll do from that point is bring that back to the board, keep the board informed, of the process ongoing, so that there's a feedback flow, from the board to the steering committee and back and forth. So, so there won't be any surprises at the end of the day when the plan's presented to you. You'll have that information ongoing, throughout the process. So what does it kind of look like? Mission, vision, values, and goals is always where we start. Is that something that the district wants to look at? Is the mission and vision good? Are those values still good? Do we need to update those and really take a deep look at that going forward? Then we'll do a SWOT analysis from the priority areas that are designed. Once the mission, vision, values, and goals are set, we'll do a SWOT analysis, and we'll really look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and really lay everything out on the table. And if it's an academic area, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What's keeping us from getting there? What are some of the things that maybe we need to take off the plate to put on the plate so that we can accomplish our goals? So that's what we do in that SWOT analysis. It's really a synthesis of everything, and it's good to have all parties involved with that, because a lot of times we get in silos, and maybe David and his team is working on buildings and things of that type in classroom environment, but he may not understand what the academic people are looking at, and they probably don't understand what he's looking at. So having everybody around the table and having everybody in that conversation is important. We'll develop from there. We'll select the highest priority levels and kind of narrow those down into focus areas. So it'll go from priority areas to focus areas. And then from those focus areas, then we'll work to develop district goals and performance metrics. That's one of the things in the strategic planning process is once you get to the goals and action steps part, then you have to measure and see if you're accomplishing your goals. So we'll have performance metrics that are laid out as well. The goals or the action steps will be in a SMART goal format, so it'll be detailed where they're specific, measurable, achievable, time-bound, and relevant. So who's doing what when, who's in charge of shepherding that through the process from the district level, and ensuring that we look at that on an annual basis. Then we'll develop a monitoring plan and supporting documents for you, and then you'll have tools at the end, and I'll kind of show you what those tools look like. And those tools are customizable to the district, where the district can look at that on a quarterly basis, they can look at it on a biannual basis, they can look at it on an annual basis, and you can attach a score to that the district decides. It could be on a 1 to 4 scale. And you can grade yourself as to how you're moving forward in that, and if you need to revise that. So we'll develop those tools, and all those will be provided to the district at the end of the process. So that monitoring plan is important. So we'll be looking at these four bullets. How to start the monitoring plan, how to report back to the board, if that needs to be quarterly, monthly, however that works for you, then we can incorporate that. Again, we've talked about how the goals will be measured, ensuring the plan is implemented. The plan is not only only as good as the implementation and the follow through on it. So, and then making sure that we gather the right data and report the right data back, so that we're actually gathering what we need to grade the plan out. So at the end of the day, what you'll get is a strategic plan aligned to the mission, vision, values, and goals of the district. It'll be a plan that has goals and action steps that are public facing but also internal, so that a little bit more detail on the internal part, and then public facing so the community can see those, and those will be posted on your website and however you want to do that. As Grant said, there are several changes that have been made with TISA, and those goals and action steps need to align to that, so that when the budget is developed and that goes to the county commission for for funding, that those are in line with TISA goals, so that everybody's not surprised at the end of the day where everything lies and what the priorities of the district are. And then that monitoring plan, so that the plan just doesn't really sit on a shelf, and it's really an actionable plan and a living plan, so that, you know, it can be changed if it needs to be changed. So those are the kind of the things that we'll kind of look at in the plan. So let me pause right there before I kind of show you some of the other tools and see if there's any questions that you all might have about the process.
What's the timetable for implementation?
Normally, it just depends on how things go. We've laid out about 9 days. We'll probably do those in half-day formats, because about 3 hours is about all you can mentally handle at a time. So if we move faster than that, it'll probably, you know, be probably by the end of this year, probably December. So implementation probably start in the spring, or maybe even in the, you know, mid-spring, just depending on how fast we move. So that's what I've seen in the past.
Did the other schools that you work with on the implementation of this, did they go back and look at it on a quarterly basis, or 6 months basis, or whatever?
It's been both. You know, Lawrence County and Humboldt, they look at it quarterly. Cleveland City Schools wanted to do it biannually. So it just depends on what the district wants. You know, we can set it up either way in the tools that you have, but it can be looked at either way. Yeah. But most of the ones, the ones that I've worked closely in, it's been quarterly.
Bobby, I'm assuming this is a comprehensive view. This takes into account instructional programs, facilities, maintenance, technology, personnel management.
Right.
The
Nine
whole
yards.
picture.
Whole picture, yeah.
Is there some thought to having some opportunity, and this would have to be managed, because it could get to the point that it would slow the process unduly, but to at least invite and consider public input on the final product?
Well, I mean, that's up to you. I mean, it can be done either way. I mean, we've done work with districts just like what we did when we built the plan, where we had subcommittees and things of that type. And then we've also worked, just like Lawrence County was the last one that we did the steering committee process, and then they reported it back to the community and the board that way. So it can be done either way. I think feedback can probably be gathered through the steering committee. You know, that's probably a good way to do that. Because a lot of the steering committee people that are supervisors here will be representative of the community, but we can do it either way.
And sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I just, again, part of what he's talking about is that some of the goals are going to be established for us in what we're putting our funding towards. So that's what TISA is going to require of us, is that, okay, you're going to spend money on this. How is that going to help student achievement? Tennessee investment in student achievement. And so some of those goals will be determined for us through that. But I think, again, once we're able to maybe identify those at the district level, then we can put it out for some public feedback.
Well, I mean, operating within the parameters of the law, obviously, we've got to do that. But I think there's just some inherent benefit in kind of spreading out the number of, shall we say, valid inputs in this, so that we're not missing something. And of course, the other issue is we're spending taxpayer money, and I just
Absolutely.
think it'd be good to have an opportunity for some public input. All that said, we don't want to do anything that's going to clog up and slow down the process. If we're going forward with this, there's got to be an end point at some time. A report is produced.
Right, exactly. And like I said, those documents at the end as well will be reflective of your feedback, will be reflective of feedback that has, come from, stakeholders, through the steering committee. And then those public facing documents will be, it's required that strategic plans posted on your website. So those will be public facing, on the website so that they can see that. And, I've seen districts that have taken the monitoring and the implementation plan as well. And as they go through that, they put public facing feedback there as well. So it can be done. It's fully customizable to what you want to do.
That takes care of my questions.
Any other questions?
I couldn't get I don't know, it died again, Grant.
You're doing very well here.
If it,
May have come out of that. Oh, no. Go shut down.
I was just going to kind of show you some of the implementation tools if we can get there. If we can't get there, then that's all right.
It's still on now. I'm not sure what happened.
There we go. Okay. So here's just what you'll see. It'll really kind of be built out in an Excel format. So it's fully customizable. This is, I think, Lawrence County in the plan that we did for them. So you can see you'll have a dashboard or directions there. Again, they put that in a quarterly format. So you can kind of see they'll have a master plan, a dashboard, the quarterly action step process, implementation plan, and then any updates and guidance there. So if you went to the master, everything rolls into the master. So you can see these quarterly updates here. These are their action steps and their coding there. So to Bill's point, they looked at safe and healthy staff and students was one of their goals that they wanted to work on, as well as academics. So they looked at the comprehensive view of that. So this is their action steps, and then what they'll do is go in and each quarter, so if they come over to quarter one, and they're looking at, reviewing each one of those, then at the far right, they can put a score right here with a drop-down box. So it's, I think, on a 1 to 4 scale. So it's on a 1 to 4 scale. They code themselves on a 1 to 4 scale. That pulls into the dashboard. So Director Wallace and his team can see that in the dashboard area. If he wants more detail, then he can go into the detail and get that. So the directions and updated guidance will is again fully customizable, but it tells you what constitutes a 4, what constitutes a 3, what constitutes a 2, and that can be customizable as well. And then the implementation plan portion of that, again, you can see when we start rolling things in, it'll have the activities, because each one of those action steps are going to have certain activities that happen to meet that goal. Then there'll be an owner for that, there'll be a start time, and there'll be an end time. So these documents can be amended to be public facing. They're designed to be also internal, so that makes it a living, breathing plan. And then at the end of the day, what you'll receive is a report. I can pull that up.
So Bobby, who is responsible for this data input? Is it that particular department that
No.
is associated with that goal?
That's me.
Okay, that's you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what you get with the package. So
Okay.
what they're going to do, what I'll be doing is kind of guiding the process, but in the background before each meeting, I'll be ensuring that all of this is built out and brought back to those meetings.
Okay.
So that the team here can focus on educating kids and doing the things that they need to do. And then what I'll be doing is doing the background work, to prepare the plan, develop the plan, get all the data in from their feedback.
Okay.
So I'll take that each time and synthesize that, analyze that, put it into the tools.
Okay.
Yeah. So, this is just a document that we provided to the Lawrence County Board of Education, about 2 weeks ago. And it's their 5-year plan. So you can see all the board members are listed. It's got, their logos and things of that type on it with some information. Went through the process. These are their areas. So they focused on 3 areas: safe learning environments, academics, and college and career readiness. Those are the things that they wanted to focus on. It can be, building and grounds, academics, and whatever. So again, it's what the district wants to really focus on. Then what we do is pull over into here, again, mission, vision, core values, and then for each goal, for example, we'll list the goal, we'll list the action steps, and we'll list the performance metrics. So going back to the public feedback portion of that, that'll be on your website. So anybody that wants to pull that up can say, this is what that is. So at the end of the day, that's what it'll look like. All right.
Any questions?
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We're
It's
excited.
impressive.
I appreciate the opportunity and excited to get started and work with the team. And we'll give you the best plan that we can give you.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, Bobby. We are excited about this process, and I know that you all will have some things that you want to add to and help us shape that, and we'll be looking forward to the end, certainly, when we have a document that will help guide our next steps. So our operations report is a lot of reports this time, and when we met in a workshop back in the winter, late winter, we talked about putting some things in place for our board meetings, especially an operations report. One of those was around the district threat assessment report. So you all, of course, we were able to attend the Summer Law Institute in Gatlinburg this past weekend. If you remember listening to the Tennessee Director of Homeland Security talk about a few things, one of the things he kept talking about was a threat assessment. And so that is a part that's going to be a major focus moving forward. One of the things that I think, again, that I say this time and time again, but I think it's a tribute to a lot of hard work that's gone on prior to, is that Warren County Schools has had a threat assessment team for a number of years and worked really hard to have that in place. And so just wanted to give you an update about where we are with that, but also say to you that I've said this to you before, with the new law that went into place July 1 around school safety and its requirements, there are a number of things that are going to alter what we do. And some of that is as simple as locking outside school doors, and as complex as having threat assessment teams in place. And so we're going to be spending a lot of time. And so I use this example with our principals today, and really Robin used it when we had a school safety meeting back in June, is that really for school systems, we are transitioning into a different stage than we've ever been in around school safety. There are requirements that are changed, and we use the example of after 9/11, before 9/11, airport security was a lot different than what it was after 9/11. Our school safety and school security is going to be very different based on the new laws and the things that are required of us in the school system. And again, I do feel like we've put lots of good things in place to help us be ready for that. But at the same time, it's going to be a work in progress. We're going to be talking to our staff next week during professional development about those needs. But I do want you to hear, Robin's going to share a little bit about threat assessment and the team that we have put together. And Jarvis is here, who also serves on that threat assessment team. And I serve on that. We have a district-wide team, and schools have a threat assessment team. But I'll be quiet and let Robin talk a little bit.
Okay, well, my report will be very quick, but we did start this under when Bobby was here and was director, and at that time it was an option We, believe started that in 2019. And we were trained, we had a team of probably about 7 or 8 people at that time that were trained by the state. We went to a 2-day training and heard from, really the training is from the Secret Service folks developed it. And it's about behavioral threat assessment, looking at, what behavioral characteristics are indicative of some student that maybe has not yet done anything that has been a crime or a discipline problem or a violence or any type of threat, but we feel like there may be some concerns that something might happen in the future. And the whole point of the threat assessment team is, first of all, to look at that behavior and look at that particular student very holistically. The team is interdisciplinary, so I'm on that, from risk assessment, legal. We have, mental health folks on there. We have nurse, we have principals, we have district admin, we have law enforcement, we have our safety folks from the district level on that team. And so we try to get a big, broad picture and everybody, so that we can look at it from a lot of different vantage points, number one. And then we collect information from different sources, that being what's happened at school, what specific things have happened that are concerning, that can be provided by any staff member, parent, student, to the principal, who then, does a school assessment, just a rough, do we think this is a threat or not? And they rank that between low, medium, and high. If it's low, then they usually just keep the information. If it's medium or high, if it's high, then it comes to the district level. If it's medium, usually it would come as well. So then they send that over to the central office, and we have a sit-down meeting and discuss it. We look at the child, some questions that are asked of any witnesses to any behavior. We look at any physical evidence. We look at, talk to the student, talk to the parents. It's a holistic wraparound look at that student as much as we can. There's, information that, we have from student records or any of those different sources. And then we try to analyze that. We do, all this is of course not a public record because we are trying to do stuff where we can be collaborative and bring everyone to the table to look at concerns without that being, putting someone, invading the privacy of an individual student. So we look at that and make a plan as needed to help that student stay in school, because as we know, this student typically has not really probably done anything at that point, but it's concerning. And also, these students, for the most part, are going to be our students throughout their education. So we want to be able to allow that student to stay in school with the supports that we can give them in any, maybe a plan, behavior plan or something of that type. But also agreement that the parents will help support that student and different trusted adults in the building. And we just got retrained this summer, and we had a basically total overhaul of the team, because we started in 2019 and then we used it the fall and early spring of 2020, then we shut down school. And then, as we came back, we had other things. We were really not focusing as much on this because we did have a lot of turnover in positions. So we've just been retrained. We've had a virtual training. We've had 2 stages of training, one in person. And so we're ready to, and we've also changed a bunch of our documents and such, our process a little bit. so that we'll be ready to start up and work on that when we get back to school and through the summer as needed, but.
And so, again, going back to what you all heard this weekend, I mean, we can make our school buildings as secure and safe as and we're gonna do that. Physical safety is important, but if you remember what he said, ultimately, the buildings are as safe as they can be, but if we neglect the mental and social aspect of this, most of the people that are going back in history that are responsible for shootings at school buildings have either told somebody that they're going to do it in advance, or they exhibited behaviors that would say that. So that's what this threat assessment team's ultimate goal is to give, from a district standpoint, to give our schools some help and training and to make sure that they're there, but we're also doing it at the school level. And there's a tremendous amount of work that's gone into that with the forms, and we're just very fortunate to have the people in this district that work to make sure our schools have what they need and make sure we're trying to give our students what they need. So we just wanted you all to be aware of that, answer any questions that you have about it, but I think it's important you understand what the term threat assessment team is. Our community understands what a threat assessment team is and what we are able to provide by doing that. So any questions around that?
I think that session with Greg Mays, the Homeland Security agent who's organizing the statewide system, and we will have our own dedicated Homeland Security representative for Warren County eventually. He said that this is a process that will take some time. You may have noticed when Bobby was presenting the Lawrence County strategic plan that one of the areas of focus was school-based therapists. And to Robin's point about the behavioral aspects and the intervention, the mental health support, I just think we all need, and I'm not saying anybody's neglecting that, but I think that should be very definitely an area of interest.
And we are able to provide that. We're actually doing teletherapy that we've gotten through that grant, and so it is certainly a focus in the state of Tennessee, and they're making funds available for us to be able to provide those things.
Well, I'm glad, and I'm glad that we're able to provide that support. But it's just, I think we need to make sure that students, teachers, everybody in the system needs to know that it is accessible, it is available.
Sure.
And we do have lots of partnerships throughout our community. We have one with Volunteer. We have two, I guess, with Volunteer and other providers as well. We've had a STARS person for several years through a grant. So, because it's hard, they say that we're in a sort of the desert of mental health because we're just a little bit too far from Nashville, a little bit too far from Chattanooga, and so we have sort of, there's not a lot here. I think it's getting more and more, but there are also a lot of people who are asking for those same folks. So we're always trying to get as much as we can, but we oftentimes have to wait for a while before we get the resources, even when we are looking for that. So I think that is a high priority.
If you look at some of those maps and national studies, it shows these mental health support deserts. And the urban areas are usually pretty well favored. It's those, like you say, Robin, that are sort of in between the urban areas that have to fend for themselves.
But we've been really lucky because we do have some good partners that have provided, good people that are in our buildings and helping us. And as well as the teletherapy, which is, school-based, but they don't come into our building. It's through teletherapy.
Well, that's a good thing.
All right. Any other questions? All right, so another thing that we decided we would do in our July board meetings is to have a human resources update. I don't think when we established that we thought that we would have a brand new director of human resources when that happened. So Todd Wilmore's here with us. Bless his heart, he's been on the job all of about 2 weeks. So he's going to do his best to update you on where we are. Of course, you know that school starts in 2 weeks, and so principals and Todd have been working really hard to get our vacancies filled and our staff full, and so I'll let him update you about where we are in that. So, Todd?
Thank you. So I've been, as Grant mentioned, started in latter part of June, coming over working with Roy just a bit, and then last week of June full-time, and then from July moving forward. And so the numbers I have are really, I'm just looking at certified staff, not necessarily other positions, but from latter part of April moving forward, we've had roughly, exactly 42 new hires and 17 transfers. And those when I say a transfer, that's not us within a school, that's from one school to another school, or one position within the district to another position in the district. So that's a lot of movement in the last couple of months. Currently, we have a few positions still open, and I'll just share those with you. It's really just, obviously our school is here, but we'd like them all filled, but it's not as bad as it was, say, 7 days ago. Bobby Ray, we're still looking for a K-5 teacher there. Centertown's got a teacher that's going to be on leave due to maternity leave, so they're trying to find somebody for an interim position there, 3rd grade. Hickory Creek's got a 4th grade English language arts teacher they're looking for. West has a 1st grade teacher, a transitional CDC teacher, and then a physical education teacher. I think she's got some prospects on all 3, so hopefully we'll have some recommendations coming soon there. Eastside has, Fort Rex has been the same, but he's hired 2 7th and 8th grade math teachers, and both have rescinded in the last 3 weeks. So
one of them today.
One of them was today. Yeah. And then lastly, the middle school's got 7th grade math and an 8th grade science that they're working on. A few district-wide positions. We've to some of the points that you were talking about, Mr. Zeckman, we do have a grant. It's a 3-year grant, and with that grant, we have an opportunity to pick up a couple mental health therapists, which we've had some good applicants for those so far. We also have a district-wide SEL liaison that we're looking for as part of that grant. And then we're also able to have a part-time school counselor that'll be at Warren Academy. So we got that. We finally got that position posted today. We feel like we've got a good prospect or 2 on that. Still looking for an athletic trainer. That's been kind of a thorn in our side since November. Most of the folks that I've spoken with, whether it be at MTSU's athletic training or UT, or Zach Sutton's been real helpful with this too, and we've been searching far and wide, and there's just not, the numbers of applicants nationwide has dwindled over the last 5 years. We looked at, we compared our income, with other districts like Williamson County, Rutherford County. We're competitive there. Grants offered some incentives, so we're still pushing. It's just hasn't happened yet. So that's one that we hate that we don't have, but we do have a plan for the fall semester. So hopefully that will get us through, and we'll have another prospect come through. Special education is looking for a school psychologist. And then lastly, career and technical education, they're looking for some career coaches. So that pretty much wraps up what we're missing in terms of personnel on the certified front.
Thank you, Todd. We actually, he mentioned a 4th grade position at Hickory Creek, and the State Board of Education actually approved a new teacher waiver for teacher candidates, which would be a college student that's in a teacher preparation program that is going to be entering into their residency. So what we would know as student teaching. And so for the first time ever, we're able to, as a school system, hire these student residents for them to work for us full time, and they will be given a waiver to teach, and they will be able to be hired and working full time in our school district. and we actually have our first one in 4th grade, and he's already left, but Bobby's daughter, Savannah, is going to actually be taking a job. She can't take it until October when her coursework is complete. And we're actually I had that conversation with some of the principals today. We may have to be looking at that in a couple different places. So we've used a lot of different avenues, and I think I saw on the news today that there are some districts in our state that are looking for multitudes of hundreds of certified teachers. And so we are in a crisis as far as employment goes. And so thankful for the work that our principals have done, what Todd's led, Roy on his way out the door for us to get to where we are. But we still need some people. So if anybody's watching on YouTube and are looking for a job, we'd be happy to talk to you. So any questions for Todd?
Todd, how does our classified look as far as filling those vacant positions?
Well, actually, Shay came and checked this afternoon because we've got several grant-funded classified
Right.
positions, and we've only got 3 that are open currently, so we're in better shape than she was anticipating.
And we also added numerous educational assistant positions district-wide, and we've been able to fill those, but I attribute that to the salary increase that this board passed this past year. I think it's really enticed people to potentially come to work for us.
This could be a question for Todd or David. How about custodians and cafeteria workers and stuff like that? Are you been able to fill most of those classified?
Actually, we were just talking about that today, that we're probably more staffed now than we have been in quite some time.
That's an answered prayer.
I'm surprised. That's good.
That's good.
School
I am.
nutrition, they're adding people often, so.
Good.
that's
Good.
I am still trying to work for a groundskeeper.
Got one position left?
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for Todd? Todd, thank you for being here and giving us that report. The last report before we move on to something you all are going to actually have to vote on is the summer school report. We just did wrap up what we call our Acceleration Academy. Let me give you a few numbers on that. We had 1,077 students that enrolled in our Acceleration Academy district-wide. So that's about 17% of our student population that enrolled in the summer program. I'm happy to give you numbers by school, but it's comparable to what you would see during the regular school year. Hickory Creek's going to have, elementary-wise, is probably the highest elementary school-wise, 176, and it's pretty comparable all the way down through. Just also remember that the rising 4th graders were our biggest crew this year, and there were 63 of rising 4th graders that attended or that were enrolled in our Acceleration Academy this year. And obviously we know what the cause of that was. I will say this, I'm happy to report that we spent an enormous amount of time working on the Tennessee Literacy Success Act, better known as the retention law. And I reported to this board after our TCAP scores that we had 329 students that were below or approaching out of a total of 497 students. And as of today, there will only be 9 students that will be retained. And so that's 1% of the rising 4th graders that will actually be retained. So I think that just speaks to a lot of hard work of our schools and by our families. I do not want to leave that out. Our families have worked extremely hard. Now, I will tell you, some of those students that are going to 4th grade are not across the finish line yet. Some of them are required to do tutoring throughout their 4th grade year, which we talked about with our principals today. We will be providing that tutoring, and there will be some attendance requirements around that. They have to get to 90% attendance in those tutoring programs, and that tutoring program has to mirror Tennessee All-Core, which is 2 times a week for 30 minutes a day. And so
During the day or after hours?
we hope to be able to get some of it during the day, but a lot of it will take place after school as well.
What happens to those students if they do not?
The law says that they can be retained. Now, who knows who's going to say whether they can be retained or not? I anticipate further guidance on whether they will be retained or can be retained, or whether that's a local decision, whether that's a decision that will be, we don't know exactly what the monitoring looks like on that yet. But we have been assured we will be monitored on it.
Okay.
These 9 students or 1%, how does that compare in years past, the students maybe that were retained, you know?
Well, just have to remember, the conventional wisdom for a long time has been not to retain students
Exactly.
if we can help it. So that's more than what we would have seen in the past. Because, again, and I've said this, and I think I've probably said it to you, we don't disagree with the fact that they need to be on reading level by the time they're in 3rd grade. The issue with retention can often be based on age. If they're retained in 3rd grade and then they get to the high school and they're 18 or above, you know, the compulsory attendance law, after 18, a student can drop out, and then that becomes something that we understand is not good for a student to drop out of high school and not get that degree. So there's give and take on both of those. So there's not been, to answer your question, this 9 is more than what we have done in the past, but based on the fact that we had almost 329 eligible at one point.
That's
to
what
get
was
to 9.
what we were looking at going into the first week of June to where we're at now. I think it's pretty. That's a major success.
1% is not bad, and I think I will say this. I need to make sure that we say, you know, there was a lot of outcry for some flexibility, and I think a number of our students and families were able to take part in that flexibility, and that's what's gotten us to this.
I think too, before this law became effective, the part in retaining students, it was always the thumbs up of retaining them before they got to 5th grade.
Sure.
So that way they would be where they would be. If you're going to retain them, we would retain them before they got to 5th grade level because of reading, not being able to read, or not some other academic skills.
So, one other aspect of the summer school was that students were taking pre and post tests, and they had to show adequate growth in that pre and post test. So, one of the things that we're going to work on earlier this year, and I said this to our principals this year, we really didn't know, to give that example, what adequate growth was. And so this 3rd grade class, rising 4th graders, has really been through the ringer, because even in January when we were having those parent meetings, there were still a lot of things we didn't know. Well, guess what? That's not true for this rising 3rd graders. So we're going to start earlier by being able to offer some of those parent meetings. We're going to do that again, go to schools, try to talk to our parents, try to talk to our students, try to identify those needs a little earlier, and provide tutoring where we can as best we can.
Well, that's an excellent point, because when school starts and they take that early benchmark test and you're below that 50% threshold, we as parents know that we have work to do when we get those results. You can start addressing that problem early on, or even the earlier grades, K2. Don't wait. We don't have to wait till 3rd grade now that we know what the law. There's no gray area. It's black and white now.
So we'll be doing that. We'll be setting a calendar for that. Certainly invite you all to go with us. We'll probably do that at the end of August, beginning of September, maybe after Labor Day. Start to set those meetings with parents and
I think
get out.
a lot of the 3rd grade parents were confused about what they could do or what not, because some of them went through the summer program and they took the pre-test and then they didn't make it on the 2nd test, and then they were saying that they've got to go to the tutoring program, and they weren't very happy, with it. With that being said, and I think sometimes I have to agree with them, because they sprang this on all the parents and the students at a really bad time. Nobody had any heads up to what was going to happen.
Not only confused, but scared too. I mean, they haven't,
Yeah,
nobody had all the information, so it was impossible for all of us.
we was all in the dark pretty
Right.
much,
So I think
didn't
moving
know which
forward,
direction to go, you know.
with some of the tweaks they're gonna do to the law as they talked about over, last weekend, but, I think we're way better shape to prepare. Like I said, even, Tommy said that even at K through 2, we can kind of look at this now, knowing what's ahead of, to
It's a whole lot
get ahead of
easier.
the curve.
It's a whole lot easier to sell a product if you've got an owner's manual.
Right.
All right, last thing on the operations report that will require your approval is an MOU that was provided to you by the Ayers Foundation. We were fortunate enough to go through an RFQ process in late spring with the Ayers Foundation to become a member of the Ayers Scholars Program. And this would be something that was similar to what was done in Warren County a few years ago through Tennessee Achieves, where Tennessee Achieves provided a college access counselor that worked at Warren County High School and really became the person that students would go to be able to connect the dots in anything post-secondary as far as applications or filling out FAFSA or any of the things that go on and making sure that our students have somebody that's dedicated for our senior students, for our 12th grade students, to be able to help them navigate that. If you've been through it, once you graduate high school, it's a pretty tough navigation to try to get some of the access and scholarships and different things. So we applied to be a part of this expansion. The Ayers Scholars Program has been around for several years. It's been primarily in West Tennessee. Their foundation is housed in Parsons, Tennessee, and so it started in one high school in West Tennessee, and then it's expanded to several other ones, and then now it's expanded once again, and Warren County was fortunate enough to be selected by the Ayers Foundation to be a member of this program. What they're going to do is provide a college access counselor for every 100 12th grade students that we have, which will qualify us for 4 college access counselors that will be assigned to the 12th grade students in our district, not just at Warren County High School, but in our district. So any 12th grade student will have access to this counselor. They will work hard to make sure that they're meeting with each of their assigned 12th grade students to be able to say, what's your interest, where you want to go, where do you want to apply, what do you want to do when you leave, and then they will even go as far as to track these students once they leave our district to make sure that they're getting what they need as far as if it were to be a 4-year university, being accepted and how successful they've been. And so I was really impressed throughout this interview process with the model that the Ayers Foundation uses. And it has seen a lot of success in some of these other places. Bobby mentioned Lawrence County. Lawrence County is also a member of this program. And so the MOU that you have, it outlines the responsibilities of the foundation. They're going to provide counselors and coordinators. They're going to provide ongoing training. They're going to supervise, evaluate, and mentor those counselors. They're going to visit the school, check in with them. They're going to manage the collection of data, confirm that each counselor continues to communicate. Really, all we are doing is making sure that we provide office space, furnishings, phone lines, internet access, access for our counselors. We are going to provide an on-site liaison so that their counselors and coordinators can make sure that they integrate with our schools. And then there are several other things that are listed there. I won't read all of those to you, but really, I think this is a win for us. This is all grant funding that's being provided to us by the Ayers Foundation. We are going to have access to 5 professionals that are going, 4 counselors, 1 coordinator, and they will not hire the coordinator until December. But we're very fortunate to have been selected because they actually expanded the program to a number of counties. We had to submit materials, and then they interviewed each county, and they only had enough funding for a select few, and Warren County was a part of that. So we're very fortunate to have this. I would like to ask you to consider approving this MOU. and then they are ready to get on the ground and get to work. So any questions I can answer for you around that, be happy to do that.
Mr. Chairman, I've looked at the MOU, and I think our input from the district side is pretty minimal to provide office space, telephone lines, computer services, and access to the students and the counselors. So I want to move for approval of the MOU with the AIRS Scholars Program, the TAF rural expansion.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second on
I'll
this?
second.
Second, Mr. Judkins. Any discussion on this TAF Rural Expansion Foundation? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Nothing in curriculums and achievement. Is any other business?
Grant, I have a quick question. In reference to Tech Trap, which is our, kind of our homeschool type program, are you seeing a trend of those students maybe coming into our schools or more students coming into Tech Trap? Are you seeing anything with that?
There are more folks that are looking for homeschool options
Okay.
than in the last few years, and so
Okay.
we did offer some more slots this year.
Okay.
So far, we haven't really necessarily had an expansion in that. There are some other counties that are looking for us to take some of their students, and Dr. Bennett and I have been working through that with Tech Trap. Tech Trap actually called today to talk about some of those things, but you know, to answer your original question, I would not say the trend is that they're coming back to us. I would say the trend would be that they would be looking for that homeschool
Okay.
option.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to, on a sort of personal privilege, just note, I was running a little late getting to the meeting this evening. I've been at High's Funeral Home visiting with the family of Swanson Bennett. I'd just like to say that Swanson contributed to this community in so many different ways. I think his moral leadership was sort of a rock of Gibraltar for the community. I just wish everybody in public life had his sense of personal integrity and social responsibility. This is important to this school district because Swanson was the leader among the insurance agents, and I was just an humble follower trying to do a little bit in supporting the rural fire departments. And if we did not have that kind of support for the rural fire departments, especially at that time when they were struggling to get a solid footing, particularly financially and in terms of subscriptions with our rural residents, we would be in a much worse situation for fire protection for the assets that this school district has in rural areas. It's a world of difference between what we call a Class 5 fire protection service and a Class 9, or heaven forbid, a Class 11. And I just think that we all owe a great debt of gratitude to Swanson Bennett, a dear friend of mine, and just a great citizen. So we can thank Swanson for helping get the rural fire departments in a situation where they could provide really effective, credible fire suppression for our rural schools. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well said, Mr. Zeckman. Mr. Bennett was a fine man. Any other comments? Okay, could I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Mr. Judkins. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Best. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
You are dismissed.